Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Bootstrap Solo. My name is Pratik Shah, and today we're going to be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly about running your own practice and growing your business. This podcast is for those that want to know what it's really like to start, run, and grow a practice. Today's guest is Jonathon Farahi. He runs a 20-person practice that focuses on personal injury, and he started his practice back in 2018 and has been growing strong ever since. Jonathon, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm truly excited to kind of sit down and talk to you because from every mutual contact we know, I've heard such unique things about your brain and the way you practice law and think about the law that is unlike many attorneys. So I'm really excited and grateful that you're having me.
Oh, thanks, man. You know, I've been able to fool a lot of people, so I appreciate you saying that.
That's two of us.
So yeah, we chatted a little bit before the show. I talked to you a little bit about your practice, and you told me you started your practice in 2018. Is that right?
That's correct. It was in November 2019, I believe, is when
2019. Okay, you got licensed in 2018.
2018, and then I started my career at Axelrod Beer Co. and Trey's on Salo in Encino, where I was the world's worst associate.
World's worst. That's quite a title.
Yeah,
that's quite a title.
I think.
Why do you say that?
I'm an entrepreneur by trade. I got my undergraduate degree in entrepreneurship. And even before I went to law school, I worked in sports. I worked for the Lakers and the Miami Heat. So I've never really been a follower. I've been more of a kind of do my own thing, not because of ego or anything. For me, it was, at least for the law, was so stressful. It was, if I'm going to carry this much stress, I want to be the one calling the shots. You know,
Yeah.
it was neutering to carry the stress but not have control.
So after you got licensed in 2018 and you decided to work for Danny Abir, Boris Trezon, which, by the way, friends of mine, I love those guys. So great guys, great place to work. Danny and Boris are two of the sweetest guys for people that have had so much success. And so you decided to work there. And did you take that job? It seems like you had this entrepreneurship desire even in undergrad. So did you take that job because you were like, hey, this is kind of what I'm supposed to do, is I'm supposed to have a job?
So it's interesting. I never wanted to be a practicing attorney, even while taking the bar.
Okay.
Even while taking the bar, I'm like this. I kind of.
Were you like writing in the bar, I don't want to do this?
I mean, if anybody could care less about law school, it was me. I was just there having a good time. I knew my goal was to pass the bar, but I was never going to go into big law. I knew if I was ever going to practice law, it was going to be on the plaintiff side. I've known Danny Abir since I was 13 years old. We met through fantasy football, where he's never beaten me. Let me make that very clear on the record.
I need to have Danny on the next episode and hear his version.
You should, because you got to lock him in before the football season starts, because once the football season starts, he's fully plugged away and crunching numbers and reading stats. But Danny, since I was beginning in law school, kept telling me, you need to be a trial attorney. You need to be a trial attorney. And I kind of kept telling him, like, yeah, it's not really for me. My brother's a PI attorney. My cousin's a PI attorney. My uncle's an employment plaintiff's attorney. So I've always seen this side of it. And business was my first love. But eventually, Danny kept chasing me, and I had an interview with Boris. I'll never forget this moment. Boris just starts grilling me. But I knew what he was doing. And just the way I could see how his brain was working. And immediately I said, I don't care what it is. I don't care what I do. As long as I can sit and learn from that guy and kind of have contact with that guy, that's someone who I lack of a better term, I fell in love with Boris.
Yeah. That's just somebody where you're like, I need to learn from that guy.
Yeah, it was in 5 minutes. I knew his brain works at a level of maybe 2 or 3 other people I've ever met in my life. And I'm like, wow.
That's awesome. So you take the job, you're working there, and I think you had mentioned that about 8 months in is when you left and decided to start your own firm.
Yeah, so we ended up. Uh, it was kind of again, I'm lucky because of my history with Danny. And again, it's about leveraging your network, knowing, who you can reach out to and count on. I mean, I'm very fortunate for the people in my life who've opened doors for me. Um, so it was something where we kind of structured it in a way where I still continued having a relationship with them as of counsel, but I was also allowed to go do my own thing, and that was thrilling.
Well, tell me about that. I want to focus on that conversation when you went to Danny or Boris and you said, hey Boris, as much as I love you and as much as I've learned from you, it's time for me to go spread my own wings. Tell me about that conversation.
So it went two different ways. With Boris kind of didn't even like. Boris kind of just gave me a hug and he's like, "You're ready." Like with Boris, and that for me was so empowering to hear those words from Boris of like, "Okay, you got this." It's like, shit, maybe I do got this. And Danny was different because of our relationship, um, but it was kind of nice because we had the AEF case was brewing at that time. It was just the beginning of that case, and I kind of really wanted to bet on that case. That was my brainchild. That's my baby. So I wanted to. I knew if I stayed there as an associate, I would be taken in other areas, other cases. But I knew the value of this case. I knew, again, the cross between sports and being an attorney for me is like, wow, where else would I want to be? So
Yeah.
that case was incredible.
Well, tell me about the case.
Um, so the AF was going to be a supplement to the NFL. It was going to be the D League minor leagues for the NFL. They were the first mover. Now we have the USFL, XFL. But the AEF was the first league to do it in recent times, creating a pro-am secondary league for professional football players. And they had support. I mean, they had Hall of Famers. Um, Steve Spurrier was a coach in the league. Hines Ward, Jared Allen. There were some real names in this league. Johnny Manziel played in the league.
Wow.
So I didn't watch the league, but I love sports. I love football. And it's kind of my habit every night before I go to sleep is I read ESPN. And so I would track the league. And so you see that the league's first week kicks off and they beat the NBA All-Star game in ratings. Think about it.
Wow.
It's a springtime football league beats the NBA
Right.
in All-Star ratings.
Right.
Then something happens with funding. They miss payroll. And I'm just following this in real time off ESPN. Just
Yeah.
titles. I'm not even reading the articles. Uh, the funding slips for 270. They miss payroll, and then a week later, a new investor comes in and says he's investing, hundreds of millions of dollars in the league.
I think I remember reading about that. Okay.
Yeah, and so then 6 weeks later, the league decides to fold. Still nothing on my radar. Then around April of 2019, I see headlines that players are being forced to pay for their flights back home. And given my experience with the Lakers and the Miami Heat, I worked in basketball operations. I was the guy driving players to the airport.
Yeah.
And it was the most common courtesy thing in sports is that
Right.
we choose your flight, we
Yeah.
drive you to the airport, you tell us what city, it's just what we do.
Right. Right. I mean, it's common sense. Yeah.
So for me, that set off a red flag. Like something's not right here, especially after that $100 million investment. I still have the text saved. I sent Danny a text that night saying, "Hey, have you heard about this? This may be
Yeah.
a pretty good case. Let's look into it." And my credit goes to Danny for having trust in me and seeing it in the case because a lot of people shit on this case. I'm going to be
Right.
honest with you. In that time of
Right.
year, a lot of people told us we're fucking crazy. We're not going to get a dollar.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm allowed to curse. So
Yeah. Yeah. You can. Don't worry about
okay.
it.
Yeah,
You can do
people told
anything
us
you want.
People told us we're fucking crazy. And so he empowered me to drop everything I was doing. One guy was lucky enough to send me his client's contract just for us to review the contract to see if there was anything there.
Yeah.
I reviewed it, then the team at Axe reviewed, and we're like, wow, there may be something there. And then it was all systems a go.
Wow.
From there, in that first week we signed 100 to 150 players. I spoke to almost every single one. I spoke to every single one of them.
Wow.
If you do a poll of Axe, I promise you they still remember my pitch to the players. Because I would just walk around the office, call after call after call after call, just giving the same pitch. And at that point, to me, once we had crystallized the case, we were lucky enough to get really good attorneys in from Texas at Thompson Coburn, because the case got transferred to the Western District of Texas Bankruptcy Court.
Okay.
Which if you ever told me in law school I'd be practicing in the fucking Western Texas District Bankruptcy Court, I tell you, you're fucking crazy.
Right.
So, but it got to a point where for me it was, and it ties into kind of what you and I were talking about at the beginning of, before we started recording, about being an entrepreneur and bootstrapping and going into your own business. Up until a year and a half, 2 years into my business was my part-time job. It really was something that I was working 2 full-time jobs, where that football case required my attention daily. But I also knew that I had to have an income stream because I no longer worked for Axe. That I need to start bringing cases in.
So let me stop you there. So you bring these cases in, you help close them while you're still under the umbrella of Axe, correct?
No. So at this point, I only have 2 cases with Axe.
Got it.
On an of counsel basis.
Got it.
And now I'm lucky in the sense that I know people in the industry that I could call and say, hey, send me your cases. And obviously anyone who's referring you cases early on in your career is not sending you $1 million cases. You're getting a lot of Prop 213s, a lot of crazy clients.
Right. Yeah, so let's talk about that. So you start off your practice, you're talking to your friends, family, whatever, you're looking for business. They start sending you cases, and, Axe is obviously a very reputable firm. The cases you must have been working on at Axe are very different than the cases you started working on at your own firm.
That's safe to say. I think my first case at Axe was a case where a guy lost the function of his hand because microwaves leaked out of an industrial microwave. I swear to you, Boris forced me to become an expert in the different types of heating. I can tell you how a stove works, how a microwave works, how an oven works. And then I'm working on a Prop 215 case, and it's like, the one thing that I will tell you, and I stress it to all my friends who are starting their practices right now, is it doesn't matter if it's a 250K case or a 15K case, because it really is, once you see one car accident spinal injury, if you do the legwork up front and learn the spine, learn the biomechanics, treat that 15K case as if it's your 250K case, eventually you're studying it, you're learning it, and the next time you see the case and it's worth 100K, you don't have to put that legwork in.
Right. Invest your time in learning that medicine so that when that next case comes along, you can see all the things, the stuff that maybe took you 2 hours now takes you 15 minutes.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we've all been through that. Have you ever run a business before your law firm?
2.
Okay. Okay, so I can tell some sense of, in your first few businesses, things probably took a lot longer to get going than in your law firm.
I would say I don't think so, because I think my background in business before was digital marketing, digital sales. Never in the history of the world has it been easier to sell something to a buyer that's interested in your product and may not even know that they're interested in your product. sometimes I think of an air conditioning fan. I don't even say it out loud. It's on my Instagram notifications.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
I didn't tell anybody anything. I didn't search for anything, but
Right.
somehow it's here. With the law firm business model, and again, I'm lucky because I had good mentors who told me what to expect. I was always expecting a 36-month delay on every case. And I always tell
Yeah.
people, as a PI plaintiff's attorney, every day you work, you make money 3 years from now.
Yeah.
So
And you have to have that mentality that you know that you're going to have to put in the time for 3 years to get paid off on today's work.
yeah, and you have to be leveraged correctly. You have to have the right cases. You have to, if I could go back now, there's so many things I wish I would have known at the time.
Well, tell me about those things.
Number one would be systems. I think
Systems.
systems are the most important thing, because even though you may start with one case or 3 cases or 5 cases, that's not the goal. I think whether you want 50 cases or 1,000 cases, you need to start building for that on day one. Because when it gets to 50 cases, it gets to 300 cases, it's too late to work backwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
and I think that's
you
super
need to start.
important for people. Sorry, I was just going to say,
Go
I think
ahead.
it's super
No,
important
go
for
ahead.
people to talk about and think about from day one, what is the firm that I want to build 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and what's the plan on when to hire, who to hire, and what they're going to be doing when they are hired moving forward. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
And even more structured, what does that person's day-to-day look like?
yeah.
You know which doctors are you comfortable working with? Which doctors are no-goes for you? In litigation, when do you want your discovery to go out? There's so many different things that you can structure and systemize that you really should, while you have the time. With 5 cases, 3 cases, doesn't mean that you should be working less than the person with 50 or 1,000 cases. If not, you should be working twice as hard as that guy.
Yeah, I think that's super important because a lot of people, they start their firm, maybe they got one client, maybe they get a couple of friends referring them some Prop 213s, and they've got 3 cases, and they look at their 3 cases and they say, okay, all my clients are treating, so let me just chill and wait and see what happens. I mean, what do you say to that?
You're lying to yourself if you think that's a plan to success.
Right.
Because again, every day you work in this business, you're making money 3 years from now. So if you take a day off, 3 years from now, there's a day that you're not going to get any income.
Right. That's super important. So tell me about this. I want to go back to, you started your firm in 2019. You left Axe. You had some cases. You were still up counseling on them. You started bringing in some of your own cases that probably weren't, A-grade cases, we can say. And, you're building in that year to now, now you've got 20 people. But there's a whole roller coaster of stuff that's happened between when you started and where you're at today. And you mentioned earlier that you just feel like you're just kind of just starting to turn the corner. So I want to hear about from 2019 through early 2022. I'm going to ask you a very direct question. What was the hardest day you had?
The hardest day I've had. I can't point to one day, but I can tell you there have been plenty nights where I've gone to sleep with, how the fuck am I going to make payroll tomorrow?
Yeah.
Like literally as simple as, wow, when my feet hit the ground tomorrow, I have 12 hours to figure this out.
Right.
And it's both exhilarating and exhausting.
That's high stress. Because if that check doesn't clear, all the people handling your cases are like, Jonathan, why are we here?
Yeah. But the one thing that I try to do too, as I've grown, is I don't hide the business model from any of my employees. I make it very clear to them. We do not get paid hourly. You guys are hunters. We are hunters. We eat what we kill. If literally your work results in when you get paid and how much you get paid.
Yeah.
So it takes the right people and being honest with people, because you don't want someone who's going to come and, loaf and not understand the model.
Right. You need them to buy into what you're doing.
Yeah, because it's not for everyone. What we do, especially on this side, is not for everybody.
Yeah. So do you structure the compensation plan of your people in line with production?
No, everyone's kind of flat, but I am very aggressive in when we succeed, everyone succeeds.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that's a form of, knowing each employee and knowing what they like and maybe sending them to a concert just because, that's who they enjoy, or whether it's, a bonus here. Different people are motivated by different things.
Yeah. Right. That's right. And you mentioned something about hiring the right people. That's always a struggle, and that's a struggle for a lot of firms. Have you gone through a batch of hiring the wrong people and then having to learn the hard way about who the right people are?
Uh, yes, and I'll tell you, to me, that's been the most difficult part of the job
Okay.
is hiring and managing people and dealing with people uh, is a lot more difficult than I ever could have imagined. Um, because I think at least our office is completely remote. We have a few people in office, uh, but having the right communication tools, making sure everyone has the right technology, uh, time loafers. I've had some people come into my office and steal my time, like literally say they're working, and then I use my time tracking software to see, well, the lie detector determined that was a lie.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So and it burns because they're costly mistakes.
Right, right.
They're the time of training, the your alternative costs. Who could have been doing the job? Where could have you been? And then the actual physical money that you spent on this person.
Yeah,
Because I think one thing that you and I haven't discussed yet is cash flows. The cash flow aspect of our business. Uh, Again, I'm lucky because I have people in my life who I can call who are 20 years ahead of me,
yeah,
30, where I want to be.
yeah.
And I say, hey, this is what I'm struggling through. Is this normal? And they all laugh at me because they're like,
They've
listen,
been
it
through
doesn't
it.
get any better.
Yeah,
It doesn't get any better. Like your cash flow number may be X, but
yeah.
my cash flow problem is 300X and I'm still dealing with it.
Right, right. Yeah, the problem never goes away. I think it's super important to have that person that you can rely on. And I thought what you said was very important is identify the people that are in the position that you want to be in 15, 20 years from now. And don't think you're going to get there in 3 years, right? It's got to be, you understand it takes 15 years. I mean, I had somebody like that. And I remember when I started out, I'd wake up in the middle of the night thinking about my cases and thought I missed something. And I remember going to lunch with him and I'm like, man, I wake up in the middle of the night stressed about my cases. Like, when is that going to end? And he just laughed at me. And he goes, dude, I've been doing this 25 years. It doesn't end. He's like, it just gets higher stress because the cases go higher in value.
I saw a meme which literally, I think, completely encapsulates the legal profession. It goes, being a lawyer is getting paid to handle someone else's anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
That's,
literally, that's what we do. It's what we do.
yeah.
We take on your anxiety for you. Don't worry about it. We'll deal with it. We'll call you when we need you.
Yeah. So I want to backtrack because I thought the point you made about, what, speaking of anxiety, is the anxiety of waking up in the morning and knowing that you don't have payroll covered. What did you do?
You start. Number one is you got to identify how much you need. You need to have clear communication with your employees. I'm lucky. Some employees have said, you know what, if you need an extra day, we're good. And it's a difficult conversation to have. I hated every single fucking time I had those
Yeah.
conversations. I had the heebie-jeebies going in, had the heebie-jeebies going out.
Yeah. Because you
Uh,
don't know who you're going to lose.
yeah, and not only that, it's the social contract. I mean, you
Right.
come in every day, you bust your ass. It's my one job, my one return to you is that I pay you on time.
Right.
And again, my leadership, again, coming from sports, is very responsive. Taking responsibility.
Yeah.
Stand up for your mistakes, address your mistakes, and let's move on.
Yeah.
But you got to own it.
You gotta own it.
You got to own it, and I'm lucky that I had family that I could go to. I know that everyone doesn't have. I'm blessed. My brother has helped me out big time, in ways that I don't think I'll ever be able to thank him enough or repay him enough.
Right.
My uncle too. My cousins, my family. One time I had to borrow money from a fucking girlfriend. That fucking sucks.
Yeah, I can't
Fucking
imagine that
like,
was fun.
you kidding me? Like that may have been my worst day. I'll tell you that. That may have been my
That's
worst
moving to
day.
the top right there. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I've tried to suppress that one.
Yeah.
And not think about it. But like again, it's if you want to be successful, you have to put your ego aside.
You gotta swallow your pride. I think that's super important.
You have to.
Yeah.
You-
And moving forward, as you're building your practice, you're busting your tail, you're having a call for help. I mean, now that adds more pressure because you're like, I got these employees relying on me. I got to turn a profit so I can consistently make payroll for them. And then I got to make sure I pay everybody back that has helped me and show them that this was a good investment and they took a chance on me,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that. And then I got to be able to at least make a little money for myself.
Yeah. And it's. Listen. If personally, I can't carry the weight of that every day. Like personally, that if I start focusing on that pressure, it's a lot.
Right.
So really, what I try to do, and this is the perspective that PI has really given me, is because we do deal in catastrophes, we do deal in death, we do deal is tomorrow isn't promised.
Right.
Like literally, I could tell you, Pratik, let's go have lunch on Friday, but God forbid something happens to you and I tomorrow.
Right.
What fucking good were our plans?
Right.
So it's about maximizing the 24 hours you have in front of you,
Right.
and I do that both not only with my plans, but I also do that with my emotions.
Yeah.
In that you celebrate your wins for 24 hours.
Yeah.
You wallow in your losses for 24 hours.
And that's it. It's time to get back to work.
But that's it. The 24 hours is done. It's a new day.
Yeah. That's a very sports thing too, right? Like if you win a playoff game or you won the game, great. Enjoy the night, but we're back to work tomorrow morning. So it feels like that sports background mentality, you've brought it here into the business.
Oh, big! Listen, I'm lucky. So when I was working with the Lakers, Kobe was still there.
Wow.
And I didn't get to. I was in the D League. I worked my way up from the team bus driver to the assistant general manager of the D League team.
Wow.
And I didn't get to deal with Kobe much, but obviously the stories you would run around the building.
Yeah.
And there's a video of him that I watch almost weekly. It's Kobe after maybe game 2 or game 3 in Orlando.
I know.
And the interviewer is asking him, he's like, Kobe, why aren't you smiling? You guys are up 3-0, like you're about to win your 4th championship. And Kobe just deadpans this guy. Goes, job finished? And the guy's like, no. He's like, job not finished. I'll smile when the job's done.
Yeah. Exactly. Don't celebrate in the middle. Celebrate at the end.
Yeah.
And the thing about what we do,
but
though,
you should.
but the thing about what we do is there's no end. But I think that's why I think that 24-hour rule is so important, because you're going to be an attorney for 30 years. You do want to celebrate these things that are good, and you may need to wallow when things go bad, but it's not like a sports season where there is a definite end to what you're trying to do that season, right? There's a big difference there.
And I think it goes hand in hand with I'm lucky, and I attribute this directly to my mom. She ingrained it in me. She made it okay to fail.
Yeah.
Like failure is not a bad word to me at all. It's not a bad word in my office. Mistakes are not a bad word in my office. As long as you learn from them.
Right.
Like if you fail or make a mistake and you don't learn from it, it's a big deal.
That's a problem. Yeah.
But if you fail and you learn from it, then what am I going to do?
Right. You can't expect perfection.
You can't expect perfection, but the caveat to this is you can control your preparation.
Yeah.
You can't control results. You can control your preparation.
Yeah.
So if you are as prepared, if you can internally ask yourself, did I do everything possible? And that doesn't mean grinding yourself to the bone.
Right.
It doesn't mean, doing Adderall for 48 hours and not sleeping.
Right.
And, like some attorneys do that. I don't know.
Right.
But sometimes it is just taking an afternoon off and going for a walk off the beach, not having your phone and just chilling.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you can look at yourself and say, hey, did I do everything I possibly could to prepare myself for this moment? Then you can surrender to the results.
Yeah. I think that's a really, really good way to center yourself and keep that mindset that, hey, look, this is the way it goes in business. It's 1 step backwards, 2 step forward. Sometimes it's 3 step backwards for 4 steps forward. And that's just how it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just, if you don't have a control of yourself and your thoughts, and how are you going to control your business?
Yeah.
At least for me, I am my business.
Right.
There's no difference between Jonathon Farahi and the law offices of Jonathon Farahi when it comes to my brain.
Right.
And in the way that I wake up in the morning.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and this is, sometimes I get in trouble with the family about this, but I constantly think about my business.
How could you not?
How could you
I mean,
not?
You have kids?
Exactly.
You have kids?
Yeah, I got 2 boys, yeah.
How old are they?
11 and 6. And they hear about it all the time.
But they like things, don't they?
Of course they do, yeah.
But
I think it's important.
I don't know.
Is like, obviously the material stuff is nice and all that stuff's great, but I think that the lessons that business teaches you in what you're talking about, right? In it's okay to fail. And just because something goes sideways, that doesn't mean you just stop. You still got people to answer to. You still have responsibilities. You still got to move forward. I think those are such important lessons that if, I'm transparent with my employees, and I'm also transparent with my kids. If I had a bad day, I tell them, hey, this thing went sideways. And, my 11-year-old's at the point where he's been motivated by that stuff, and now he'll bake cookies and go sell them to all the neighbors. And there'll be a day he doesn't get any sales. And I'm like, that's okay. That's the way it goes,
That's
And I think that's important.
And I mean, there's so many things that I kind of on this subject that I want to touch. I think the first thing that I'll say is one thing that I think people, especially in today's day and age, are scared to admit is that greed is good. I mean, you don't fuck people over.
Right.
Don't be a narcissist. Rational self-interest is okay.
Right.
That's not a dirty word.
But everybody has self-interest. Sometimes people think like, well, as a business owner, your self-interest is worse than my self-interest when I'm an employee. But as an employee, you have a self-interest too, because if your payroll doesn't clear, you're not going to work. Like, you have a self-interest in getting paid. And the decision you've made in that situation is that you don't want to take on the risk and the stress. And the trade-off is, there's rewards that you may not get, and that's okay.
Let me ask you this. What did your dad do?
Oh, my dad was a bank teller. He hated that I started a firm.
And what did, was your dad born here?
No. He was born in India.
So how old was he when he moved? How old was he when he moved here?
He was 35.
Okay. So number one, he has a completely different hustler's mentality than any of us. That generation is different.
It's different, yeah.
It's different, but I promise you, all that stress you carry, all that worry you do, even if you enjoy it, the fact that you're giving your kids a better life than you had, is it not worth it?
It's worth. Look, I love it, right? There's nothing I would want to rather do, and I can tell you feel the same way. But there's no argument that there's a ton of effort and thought process and commitment that comes with that. And like we were talking a little bit before the show, is I think that social media has put this shine on entrepreneurship and this shine on going and starting your business that people have forgotten that it's a lot of work and it's a full time. And when I say full time commitment, I don't mean 40 hours a week. I mean it's a
Yeah, yeah.
full life commitment to this, right? There are things that get canceled. There are
It
family trips that get canceled because something goes sideways in the business, and that's just the way it works. I can't take 2 weeks vacation and say, "Don't
is.
call
Yeah.
me. Everything's your problem." That's just not how it works, you know.
It's uh I mean, where do I even go with it? Yeah. When I listen, I'm an entrepreneurship major. I went to business school. I understand business. So when I was coming out of Axe, chest puffed. Oh, I running a business. I ran to like, oh, I got this. And let me tell you, the last 3 years have been so humbling in that while there's so much to handle or know, that no matter how seasoned you are, every day in the law field brings a new challenge, like you said, that may require you to immediately drop everything. And the social media thing, it is worse than that. I don't think it's just a legal thing. I think it's maybe a societal thing where no one wants to acknowledge losses.
Right. Right. I mean,
You
what
know,
does Mike Tyson say? Right. What's that famous quote from Mike Tyson? Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
a punch of yeah. Like I mean, I'm sure you're on the same attorney chaps as I am, where everyone just posts their
Yeah.
wins. Very rarely do you see, for every 12 to 15 wins, you'll see one person who has the balls to discuss their losses. And funny enough, it usually is a woman
Yeah.
who actually has the courage to be vulnerable and say, hey, this is what happened, this is what went wrong, but this is what I learned.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's been interesting to see that, and I think I'm hoping that there's been a shift, and that's part of the reason we started this whole thing. Like I told you, is I want to put those real stories out there of like what's really going on. What do people expect? So you mentioned also earlier in the podcast that in the last month or so, you feel like you finally turned a corner. What was that moment, or
Mm-hmm.
why do you feel like now you finally turned the corner? What happened?
So I'm reaching the 3-year
Yeah.
mark on my firm. So that 36-month timeline, I am finally starting to earn the money that I worked for 3 years
Mm,
ago. You
mm.
know, my paycheck from November 2019 has finally
Yeah.
arrived in July 2022. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. So speaking of
but
that, what if anything did you pay yourself when you started your firm? How did you deal with that?
listen, I lived maybe 2-3 years without a car.
With a what?
You know,
Without a car?
without a car.
Wow.
I'd rather put that money in my employee's pocket. I'd rather put that money in my cases because it was COVID. You didn't really need a car, but you have to
Yeah.
sacrifice unless you are lucky enough and fortunate enough to have either family money or someone who's going to come trust fund you, which I didn't have the access
Yeah.
to.
Most people
I
don't.
wish I
Yeah.
did. Yeah, but you have to sacrifice. Did I go on every trip my friends went on? No.
Yeah.
Uh, did I not go out to expensive dinners at Thai? Of course, because it was something that was necessary for me to tighten my belt um, and sacrifice it because I knew what was coming too. The one thing that I will say to people, because I don't want to be too doom and gloom of, holy shit, don't do it, it's too
Right.
hard. It sucks for 3
Right.
years. It absolutely sucks for 3 years.
Yeah.
But everyone who can survive it, very rarely do you see unsuccessful plaintiffs.
I was just gonna say that. I
Uh,
mean, anybody that has ever talked to me about I'm thinking about starting my own firm, I tell them don't expect the reward for 3 to 5 years.
yeah, and it's funny. So, uh, I went to SC for law school, and I would say out of 90, out of the entire class, maybe 2% went into plaintiff side. Everyone else either went to corporate or
Right.
defense. And three stories really stick out to me about what I saw about law students and people who eventually become attorneys. Number one is, I'll never forget this. We had a class, our second semester of our first year. It was a business for lawyers. Pratik, I swear, I still have a picture of this fucking slide. Slide number 3 of day 1 of the class. If you've been in law school, you know the sound of the keyboards clicking in unison, literally verbatim. It's a transcript, better than a court reporter transcribing a deponent is a law school student transcribing a professor. And the third slide was the purpose of business is to make money. And people were writing this down as if this is a... I looked around. I'm like, excuse me. I'm like, if you motherfuckers don't know this, you shouldn't be here. You shouldn't even be pumping my gas. Like, how did you get this far in life? Like, how have you not stuck a fork in an electric socket already? Like, how has Darwinism not gotten to you?
The purpose of business is to make money.
I swear I have the slide. Like I made, and I never went back to the class. I got the highest grade in the class. I'm like,
if that's going to be on the final, I'm good. Yeah.
yeah. I'm okay without this class. And the second thing that I told these people is, the people who I would always tell them, like, oh, we're gonna go work for Gibson Dunn. We're gonna go work for SCADA, and oh, yada yada yada. I'd be like, you guys are so dumb. You guys may be book smart, but I promise you, every kid from Loyola, every kid from Southwestern, give them 5 years. Maybe in the first 5 years, you'll make more money than them. But 5-10 years from now, you're going to be working for them. Like, so to me, that kind of lack of business acumen, which is why I was so excited to talk to you, is because how many attorneys understand business? How many attorneys understand technology the way you do?
Yeah.
It's a rare breed of people who just don't. The purpose of business is to make money, and they're actually sitting there like I would say 90% of attorneys would blow their mind.
And that's another another person that I think fits that mold is Denny Abir. That guy knows his stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's been a pleasure. I've had a few great conversations with him lately, and he's been a pleasure to speak with, because exactly what you're talking about, right? Which is, he understands that, and he'll talk to some younger attorneys, and I'll see him have that conversation, the exact conversation we're having here, and it's like he's shocking them when he says, "Hey guys, we got to make money now."
Yeah. It's. Listen. I was a little bit out of lines when I was in law school, but I would literally try to mentor people. I'd take people who wanted to go work in governmental law, who have like $200K in USC loans, take them out to lunch and be like, listen, let's sit down and
let's
talk
do some math.
100%. I respect you. I appreciate you. You're a better person than me. I'll even tell you that. I wouldn't go work to go save the birds or the whales or whatever it is you want to do. My hat goes off to you. But if this is something that matters to you, this is something you care about, wouldn't it make more sense, rather than you doing your 60K job, right? How big of a difference are you making? Go into business, go make $500,000, and donate $250K. Which one do you think makes it? Which one do you think makes a bigger difference into saving the whale?
Yeah. That's a great point. I think that's a great point, and I think I think you're right. Most people, let alone just attorneys, don't see things that way, and that mindset shift, especially if you want to go start your own firm, is super important. So we're kind of getting close on time, so I want to ask a couple more questions before we wrap up. I asked you what was your toughest day, your worst day. We got that one. I want to know your best day.
Okay. My best day. I would say my best day was, I think, surviving the motions to dismiss in the AAF case, because again, it it started as I'm going to be honest, I was high as fuck when I texted Danny about the AF case. It was like 11 at night. I was ready to go to bed. It was like just some high
Yeah.
idea. It's like, wow, like we finally got this. It was just, to me, it was like, because listen, when you're suing a billionaire, you're suing the deep-pocketed defendants. There's a team of 25 lawyers on the other side who are some of the nicest people. I got to
Yeah.
give my hats off to them. But there's 20 of the best attorneys money can buy. And me, at that point, I'm 18 months out of law school. And I lack of a better term, I
Yeah.
kicked their ass. You know? Like I straight up 18 months out, kicked the best attorneys money could buy's ass with obviously the help of Boris, the help of Thompson and Coburn. But it's like, to me, that was validation of, hey, I kind of know what I'm doing.
Yeah. And you need that. You need those moments of that validation. Let me ask you this now. If you could go back to 2019 and talk to younger Jonathon Farahi, what would you tell him right now?
This is crazy because you know that this is literally my number one question to ask
Oh,
an Uber
really?
driver.
Yeah.
Is literally the first question I ask an Uber driver is, we could go to the 31-year-old version of yourself and give one piece of advice. What would
And
it
don't tell
be?
me like buy Bitcoin or something. Tell me like something about the business. Yeah.
No, of course. I would say, uh, be grateful for both the good and the bad. There's positives in both.
Yeah. There's positives in both. You either learn something or you got something good.
And the next time you see things like, how many? I mean, I'm sure you've done hundreds of cases, but the first fuck up you did on
Yeah.
a case,
Yeah. It happens.
and you
Yeah.
shit yourself.
Yeah.
You didn't sleep
Yeah.
that night. Oh shit! I didn't check the box on a
Yeah.
CMC statement.
Yeah.
Oh my god, what am I
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
do? Oh, you didn't sleep that night, and then you get to the CMC's hearing, and the judge
Yeah.
doesn't
You
even say
realize it didn't
anything,
even matter.
and you
Yeah.
wasted the night. Yeah, but that will keep
Yeah.
happening. It's not just a CMC statement. It'll be, a marketing
Right.
plan fails, or a hire burns out, and you hired the wrong person. So the problems aren't as big as they seem at the time when you look back in them in
Right.
retrospect. And you got to give yourself
Yeah,
perspective
and
at
I
all
think that's
times.
important is that when those mistakes happen, you don't have perspective. And you don't understand.
Yeah.
Obviously there are some mistakes you can't really come back from, blowing statutes, things like that you got to be really, really careful of. But
Oh,
yeah, little things like that, missing a box on a CMC or whatever it may be, it's not the end of the world, and not beating yourself up too much or getting too scared to say, you know what, that was too scary for me, I'm out, because it is going to keep happening. And if it's not on that,
but
it's
see
going to be on
that
something else.
you're 100%. You're 100% right. I mean, that was kind of my motto at the beginning of this year. I think for the first 2 years of my business, I was very
Yeah.
conservative because I knew I had to wait till
Yeah.
that third year. I knew that if I spent money in 18 months, I wouldn't
Right.
get to 36 months. But when I was getting to 28, 29 months, I said, okay, I can put my gas on the pedal now a
Right.
little bit
You
more.
see the runway.
And that was my motto. Scared money don't make money. That literally was my motto for this year. Is that now it's time for
Right.
the gas.
Right. And understanding that timing and understanding that feeling of when it's right, when it's not, I think is super, super important. So on that note, anything you want to tell the audience? Most of our audience, the three people that do listen, we have is mainly people starting off in their business, whether it may be a law firm or not. But people that are just kind of getting started and trying to understand that these hard times they're stuck in the middle of the hard times right now, and it's hard to have perspective in the middle of those hard
Yeah.
times. So what do you say to that person?
I would say two things. Number one, don't be afraid to take care of yourself. I think that's number one, whether it's, if you need therapy, whether you need exercise, whatever it is that you need to do to center yourself and make sure that you are 100%. Fuck your business, fuck everything else. You, the person, are healthy emotionally, physically, mentally, is the most important thing. And number two is always open the door for people behind you. Because I don't know one successful person who didn't have someone open the door for them.
Right. I've had plenty of mentors. I'm very grateful to them as well.
Yeah, like you can't be successful without other people helping you. No human is that special that they can all do it by themselves.
Right.
So always try to pay it back.
I love that. That's a great place to end. Jonathan, thank you so much for being on, and thank you to
Appreciate
all
you,
of
man.
you for listening or watching. We'll see you on the next episode of Bootstrap Solo. And remember, just because guys like Jonathan make it look effortless, it doesn't mean that it is.